One. And we are recording with the one and only Mr. Michael Vecchione on Saturday, June 4th, 2022, 3:23 p.m. Eastern time. And the first episode without my concussion sunglasses. So if I have a seizure from the lights and die, Mr. Vecchione has
I'll take over for you.
He has pledged to not only take over, but also foot the bill for the funeral and console my parents. So I'd like to thank him for that. But today's, as all stories with Mr. Vecchione, include either semen, blood, drugs, guns, or money, or any combination of the five. And today is no exception. But before we jump into that, Mr. Vecchione, please introduce yourself. And for everybody listening, you have several books. We've gone over most of them. They're over your shoulder on the screen. Crooked Brooklyn, Friends of the Family, Behind the Murder Curtain, and you have some more coming out, as well as the short stories. As always, those will all be in the description. Mr. Vecchione, introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Tom. And I'm glad that you're back. And you look great. Doesn't look like you won. I guess the concrete must have lost. But
apparently, my hard head was more stubborn than a brick.
Well, I'm Michael Vecchione, and I've been on Tom's show many, many times. And in my background, I was chief of the rackets division in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, where I'd spent probably about 12 years and did every kind of case that you could possibly imagine. Before that, I was chief of the Homicide Bureau. I was chief of trials. And for about 10 years, I had my own law practice as well, where I represented most of the time criminals who knew me from my days as a prosecutor, and others were, new clients. But the last 13 years, for the most part, was my time at the rackets division. So, and the case we're going to talk about today, it's not really a case. It's an event, it's strange series of events, quite frankly, involving one of our investigators.
It's actually kind of wholesome. I mean, not at face value, it's not wholesome in relation to the other stories that we've discussed. It is relatively wholesome.
You're right. I was just about to say no murder,
no
mayhem. There's some bad guys, but or one bad guy, and an investigator. And when I wrote this short story, which I haven't published, but I wrote it anyway, I called it "The DA's Investigator and the Mob Con Man: A Love Story," which is basically what it turned out to be. And I have to say, it was one of the more surprising events in a life of many surprises that I had as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. So I'm not sure I ever had any experience like this before, and I know I haven't had one since. So, so anytime you want to get into it, you just let me know, and I'll be happy to lay the ground.
So as always, not to just, I don't want to just give it away, because then why would anybody listen to the episode? But yeah, I was going to say, like, at the end of it, they might, someone might question, why in the world did you say it was a wholesome story? Well, and I mean, in relation to the things we have discussed, your books, I mean, the murders what is it? Is it Crooked Brooklyn, the one that starts with the guy going into the woods and like uncovering the body and crushing the skull with
yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I mean. It's like it's bad that police officers died on January 6th. It's bad that police officers died in the 2020 riots. In relation to Pearl Harbor and 9/11, they're not bad. It doesn't mean that they're not bad. It means they're not bad. And there's 58,000 U.S. deaths in Vietnam. That's bad, but it's not 450,000 in World War II. So that's really all I'll say about this, so as not to give it away. It's good in relation to normal like Vecchione stories, but aside from that, man, just get into it.
Well, I guess we start at the beginning, as the joke goes. I was prosecuting a corrupt FBI agent who had retired many years before. And I got some information during the course of my time in rackets that that indicated that this FBI agent was essentially on a mob payroll for a mob family here in Brooklyn, and or in Brooklyn. I'm in Queens, where I'm coming from now, but it was in Brooklyn. And what he was doing is he was passing information to a particular mobster about people who were informants, the FBI. And oftentimes the informants were informing against this particular mobster. And he would tip the mobster off, and the mobster would kill these informants. The other side of the coin was the mobster was giving information on other mobsters to this FBI agent. And there was gifts, sometimes some money passed. Certainly the mobster was getting paid by the FBI and the government. The FBI agent was, in some instances, sharing with some of the loot that this mobster was accumulating, because he was allowed to commit crimes, allowed to commit murders, because the FBI and this particular individual agent looked the other way. So that essentially was the case. And we spent a lot of time investigating, and it was not a secret that this case was pending. Obviously, it became big news. You don't lock up FBI agents for 4 murders and as a participant in a mob war and part of a mob family and part of and in the pocket of a mobster. And you don't also hear every day about a mobster basically being the kind of informant that this particular mobster was with the FBI. And I'm not going to mention names. I'm just going to refer to the FBI agent as a former FBI agent. The mobster he was on the payroll of, I'll call him a mobster. So it was not a secret. I mean, it got out, and when he was arrested, it made big news. And but what it does and what it did, and this happens many times, and it has happened to me many times. Informants come out of the woodwork, when there's a particular case out there which they think that they can make some headway in terms of for themselves. This particular con man read about the case, and he was doing 17 years in federal prison for a con that he had pulled with a couple of his cronies. And he was not a made guy in a mob family. He was what's called an associate in this particular mob family. And his crime was he somehow was conning individuals in foreign countries, mostly Europe and some in Asia, that he had access to untaxed cigarettes, and that he would sell untaxed cigarettes to these individuals in foreign countries for a great discount. But of course, for every con, Tom, I should say every con works because greed is at the center of it. The person who's being conned is greedy. And of course, the con man is greedy. The person who's being conned is looking for something for nothing, essentially, or something for cheap. And these foreign business people and store owners, etc., that he was conning, all bought into his into his bullshit. And he had a pretty good rap.
It's the hidden hand of like the free market. It's the hidden hand of con bullshit. Like
Exactly. And as it turns out, he had no cigarettes. He had no interest in selling or giving these guys what they had paid for. All his interest the only interest he had was to make money. And he made a lot of money, he and his cronies, lots of money. And they were also gamblers. And they spent tons of this money in Atlantic City, in Vegas. I mean, it was clearly working for him. They were like a cash machine to this guy. So he went to jail for 17 years. And con men in jail are always looking to get out of jail. Not that murderers aren't, but con men look to kind of pull a con to get out of jail in order to to kind of get back into the life. And that's what he did with us, or at least attempted to do this.
There's kind of a meta theme, because aren't cigarettes also like a currency in jail?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. There's the currency in jail could be cigarettes are one of them.
Yeah.
Stamps are another, for letters and stuff, things like that. So, so he's in the he's in a federal facility, hears about the FBI agent getting indicted, and sees an opportunity. And he reaches out to, I don't know if it was, I think he might have been to me directly through a letter, telling me that he had been an associate of this crime family, that he had been on the payroll of the mobster who was paying the FBI agent, and that he had many interactions with this FBI agent and witnessed the FBI agent committing crimes, taking money and doing things like that. So in spite of the fact that we had a fairly decent case against this FBI agent, in fact, at the time that we indicted him, we had a great case against him. You never can have enough evidence. So you lose nothing by bringing someone in and talking to them. So we were able to, when I say we, the detectives in my office, were able to get an order, a judicial order from a judge to essentially take him out of the federal facility, the con man out of the federal facility and into our custody, which meant that when he came to Brooklyn, he wasn't going to be kept in a jail. He was going to be kept in a safe house with our detectives guarding him round the clock, 24/7, until myself and a couple of other investigators who were working on the FBI agent's case had an opportunity to debrief him and to talk to him and to find out what he had. So we bring him in, and I got to tell you, it was as if we had gone to central casting, and found a guy who could play a mobster in a movie. He would have been perfect in The Godfather. I mean, as some guy that Sonny probably would have beaten the shit out of because he was stealing from him or something. But this guy was perfect. He had the lingo down. He had the accent. He was, he couldn't have been any better in terms of what he looked like and what he sounded like. Okay.
It's like when they say stereotypes. It's like when they say, like, in every conspiracy there is a shred of truth. In every stereotype, like, it is based on something.
Oh, without a doubt. I agree with you. 100%. So so we bring him out of prison. They bring him into the office. But first they had to, I think he might have brought him in at night. So they brought him to the safe house first, the investigators, and then he spent the night in the safe house and came to me in the next morning. So one of the investigators that was assigned to him to watch him was a female investigator, who, talk about being out of central casting. If you wanted to get a Brooklyn girl with the accent and the affect and the way of speaking and and the way she dressed and
my cousin Vinny-ish.
Oh yeah. Oh, she was perfect. She was one of the investigators who was assigned to watch the con man while he was in our custody. So I brought the con man in and I had a long chat with him. Some of the other guys who were working with me, we debriefed them, and he had some interesting anecdotes, and he had some things that we might very well have been interested in using them, perhaps even to testify at the trial. But we needed to look into some of the stuff. You can't just buy a pig in a poke. You gotta take his stuff. We told him, well, listen, you have some interesting things. Let us take a look at it. Let us interview the people that you say that you were giving us names of, and check out the events that you're talking about. And he was okay with that. Now, why was he okay? Well, the longer it took us to look into him, the longer he stayed in a safe house. He wasn't in, and a safe house was an apartment that we had in Brooklyn, and it wasn't a bad place. Certainly better than the jail that he was sitting in for, you know, for the years that he had and the years he was going to have. So he was, you know, take your time, take your time.
It's like, I had friends that, and I did it too, where you would, even after you graduated college, you would still maybe take like a 3-hour credit course online, because every time you finished class for the semester, your school loan payments started 6 months after that.
Yeah.
So as long as you just kept taking one,
you
just keep taking that. Yeah.
Go.
I know I already got into medical school and graduated, but I want to take this freshman level class on astronomy at age 25.
Yeah,
just fuck off. That's why.
Well, this is very similar. The longer it took us to check this guy out, the better off he was. And he had this, and by the way, she was an attractive woman too, this Brooklyn girl. So he had her on one, she was on one of the teams that was guarding him. And we find, and I got to skip ahead a little bit and then tell you what happened. And we find out that she was kind of loosey-goosey with the rules of the custody, which is what it was called. She would allow him contact with the outside world, meaning his family, some friends. She would allow him to talk on the phone with these people. She would allow him to get quote unquote gifts from his family, which were food and clothing and things like that. And they were also giving him money, which he had asked his family to bring to him. Okay. What was he using the money for? Well, it turns out that he was entertaining in the safe house whenever this investigator, this female investigator, was on. He was entertaining his friends. His family was up there. He would call and have dinner brought in, and they would spend the evening together. And it was, now of course we didn't know any of this until much later, but that was what was going on. And this female investigator was taking part in this. She got to know his family. She got to know his friends. She got to know him, and a relationship began to develop. Now, I believe that the con man saw a mark that she was perfect for this. He would test it, and he would get something. He would test her with something else, and he would get something in return. So he knew he had a soft touch here. And I believe that at some point they began to have romantic feelings for one another. In fact, I know they did. So we would, of course, unbeknownst to us, we didn't know any of this stuff, right? She never told anybody. He certainly wasn't going to tell anybody, and they were careful. They didn't do it when one of the other teams were on, or when she was part of a team in which the other investigator was followed the rules. So she came to me one day and she said, listen, he has a problem with his teeth. He needs dental work, and he's had the problem for a while. And the jail where he is, the prison where he is, I shouldn't say jail, the prison, has been slow in getting him to see a dentist, and it's really bothering him. So what I'd like to do, she says to me, is I would like to have us take him to a dentist, that he's got a dentist, in Brooklyn, and have the work done while he is with us. And, while you're still investigating and looking into what he's telling you, while we're doing all of that, let us take him to the dentist. I had never had that request before, ever, from a guy that was in a custody. Let him go to a dentist, let him go to it just had. So I said, listen, I need to speak to your bosses, the investigators' bosses, to see whether or not it's allowed. I mean, I'm not in charge of the investigators. I was doing my thing. They were the ones who were calling the shots. And there's rules for custodies, because a lot of bad things can happen if custody rules are not followed. Escape, for instance, somebody getting hurt, another reason. So I contacted, I spoke to the chief investigator. He like shook his head. He said, what? The dentist? It's not impossible. We could do it, but let's wait and see what you're going to do, whether you're going to need him, because then if he's going to be here for a while, we can schedule it, at our convenience. There's no rush, etc. So I kept him. And I brought him back into the office a couple of times, asked him other questions. We needed to kind of pin him down on certain things that he had told us. And all of this time, he was kind of living it up at the safe house. And it got to the point, Tom, where myself and one of the other guys who was with me on the FBI agent case said, something, none of this shit checks out.
Yeah.
This guy is basically full of shit. He's conning us. He may have known the FBI agent or seen him around, but he's got no hard information about the guy committing crimes or engaged in corruption. It finally dawned on us that he was conning us. He was looking for a quote unquote vacation from the prison he was in. And he wanted us to take care of his teeth for him. That was basically, I think, the kind of the nub of what he was, why he was out with us, right? So I didn't even bother with the dentist stuff. I said, listen, take him back. Let's not hold him in the safe house any longer. It's too dangerous. Keep in mind also, the guy's a mobster from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
The safe house was in Brooklyn. So, he could have made contact and was making contact with his friends. For all I know, they could have showed up there with shotguns and machine guns and blasted his way out of there. So I said, let's get him out of the safe house. We don't have to send him back to the federal prison right away. Let's keep him in. I think we brought him to either Rikers Island or the Brooklyn House of Detention to hold him until we were ready to bring him back to the prison, until we made a final definite decision that he was not of any use to us. So that's what we did. And things were, kind of going along very smoothly. There was no issues at all with him. He was in the jail. We were doing our thing until I get a call one day from the warden of that place where he was. And he tells me that the con man was had a regular visitor on his visitor's log. And it was they said it was your investigator. So we were, taken aback at that point because we didn't know anything about, and we would say, why is she going to visit this guy on a regular basis? We also find out from the warden that they intercepted letters that she was writing to him. And the jails do this all the time. When someone gets a letter, they look at it first before they give it to the inmate, and vice versa. The inmate has to give it to the warden or to somebody who checks it out before it goes out to whoever the letter is addressed to. He tells us that there was a series of letters between the two of them, and that now, for the first time, we had evidence of a romantic relationship that had developed between the con man and our female investigator. I am sure, Tom, that he couldn't care less about her, and that anything that he told her was total bullshit, and she fell for it. She was single. I mean, she was not some 20-year-old. She had been on the job for like 15 or 17 years. I mean, she was in her mid-30s, maybe early 40s. And this guy won her over with his con man bullshit. And they were planning something. And the dentist situation, the teeth situation, which he never stopped complaining about, by the way, even when he went to the jail, the New York City jail, he would contact our office and talk about, don't forget, you got to take me to the dentist. My teeth, don't send me back, until I get my teeth taken care of. My dentist is here in Brooklyn. He's ready to do it. You can take me, we'll under guard, you can handcuff me, all of this stuff. And we didn't realize that that was not only semi-legitimate, but there was a very good reason for that for him to harp on that and to want that. So I contacted the chief investigator. I told him about the letters. I told him about the visits, and he was shocked. He had no idea that one of his officers was involved with this. And then we got the letters. And after looking at all of them, basically, it laid out this very, I don't want to say elaborate, but kind of clever plan that the con man and the female investigator were hatching with her visits to him in jail, their letters, with her and the other thing was, we also found out that she was now a regular visitor at his relatives' homes. She got to know his family. She would go to dinner with them. She would visit their house. She would spend time with them. And so he was really kind of developing this entire relationship, or at least trying to develop this relationship. And she was, in my opinion, falling for this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. So the letters laid out something which none of us had ever seen before. This is what the plan was. He was going to continue to contact us about the dentist while he was in the New York City jail. She, from her end, was going to come to us and she had once or twice before, but she was going to come to us and tell us that she wanted to be part of the team that took him, because she felt responsible. She felt, that he had been a good custody, didn't give anybody any trouble, and she wanted to help him out before he went back to the federal prison. And she would take him to the dentist. She would be part of the team that would take him to the dentist. So that was part of the plan. He was going to complain often enough. She was going to offer her services until a date was set for him to be taken out of the New York City jail and transported to a dentist, his dentist, which was in either Bensonhurst or Bay Ridge, somewhere in South Brooklyn. And this is what the plan was. She was going to be there at the dentist's office. Even though she might that day, she wasn't, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. She had arranged, or was going to arrange, to have two other investigators take him to the dentist office. That's what it was. She was going to come up with some excuse on that day, even though she was constantly bothering us to take him to the dentist. That day, whenever it was, she was going to have she was going to beg off, say that she had something else to do, and two other investigators would take him to the dentist office. The plan was, while the con man was in being taken care of, his teeth being taken care of by the dentist, he was going to ask the dentist to use the bathroom. Now, this was all set up ahead of time. His family had gone to the dentist and said that when he comes, this is what we want this is what we want you to allow him to do, to go to the bathroom. Now, I'm not sure if they filled the dentist in on the entire scheme, but and they and they wanted the dentist to have when you take a urine sample, you get a little cup. They wanted him to have in a dentist's office, make sure he had some of those in his bathroom. And this guy, obviously, knowing that these people were organized crime connected, the dentist is not going to say, essentially, go fuck yourself. He probably, and he did, he agreed to do this. So the plan was this: he'd be working on his teeth. Finally, he would say to the dentist, I've got to go use the bathroom. Unbeknownst to the dentist, the investigators, or anyone else, the female investigator was going to be parked right outside the dentist office. The plan was for the con man to go into the bathroom, to take one of the sample cups and to ejaculate into the cup, so that his semen would be captured in the cup. He would seal it, and the dentist, now as part of this, the dentist would then call the investigator and let her know that the cup was ready to be picked up, they arranged for a place for it to be put, so that she could come in, grab it without anybody seeing her, and then she would rush and get back in her car and rush across Brooklyn to her fertility clinic, where she had been under care, and she had been preparing for all of this. And what they were going to do then is they were going to inseminate her with this guy's sperm, so that she could have his baby while he was in jail. She would raise the kid, and when he came out of jail, he would come and become one big happy family with her. His family would be there. She would be living with his family all during the time that he was finishing up his time in jail. And keep in mind, Tom, they also thought that we were going to buy his testimony. You know, when I say buy, that we were going to accept his testimony, and perhaps, and what he wanted in return for when we did that, he wanted a letter from us saying to the judge in his case that he was a special cooperator. He had given information against his FBI agent, because his lawyer was then going to make a motion to have his sentence cut based on his cooperation. So that was the plan. The plan was, and this was all supposed to happen while he was at this dentist. So the teeth, I'm not even sure to this day whether he had a problem with his teeth, or if it was just a convenient, if she picked up on the idea that he really did have a problem. She had fallen in love with this guy. She had his family wrapped around her finger, or they had her wrapped around their fingers, and she was now going to have this guy's kid while he was in jail. That was her plan. And it was all planned out. It was all staged while he was in the city jail, awaiting his return to the federal jail. She had to do all of these machinations in order to get this all set up. And she fell in love with this guy. She became part of his family. She became part of his life. She became part of his quote unquote social circle, if there is such a thing like that while someone's in jail. But that was the plan. And she was using us and his visit to us, this bullshit visit about having information against the FBI agent, in the hope that he would get a cut in his sentence, a reduction in his sentence. And when we found out about it, it was shocking. Dad, you're going to ask a question?
Aren't conjugal visits a thing though?
Conjugal visits? Yes. But you have to be married to have a conjugal visit. I'm not sure if the federal facilities allow conjugal visits.
I don't know.
Some state facilities allow conjugal visits, and those are earned by the prisoners who are quote unquote model prisoners. Yeah. Who follow the rules, etc. I never found out. I guess she didn't want to take the chance of having sex with this guy while she was guarding him. It was, I guess, too much of a risk for her to have sex while he was in the safe house. More than likely, there was someone else there all the time with him. But But that was the plan, because unless, of course, they thought that I was going to accept this guy as a witness and he'd be in that safe house for the next several months. And then they would set up a time when they could have a quote unquote conjugal visit in the safe house. But that was, that was not possible once we sent them into the city jail in preparation for him to go back to, to the federal facility. The chief investigator was absolutely, totally embarrassed. I mean, I had to go to the DA and tell him the story once we got all of this stuff. And he was, I know a lot of people use this word, but it really fits perfectly. He was mortified. It was something which we all said, what? This has never happened before. When the chief investigator was part of that conversation, the district attorney told him, you got to call her in and let's look and see whether or not this is true. I mean, these letters indicate that this is what the plan was, but it could be the figment of this con man's imagination, right? So you can't just put somebody's job in jeopardy, maybe liberty in jeopardy by locking her up if she was going to assist this guy in some other way that was criminal. You have to do an investigation. So the chief investigator started. We had the letter. That was the start. He then called her in and told her what we had. She gave it up in a second. She said, yep, all of it's true. I fell in love with this guy. He loves me. I want to have his baby. He's obviously in jail and we can't get married. And I want to have his offspring ready, waiting for him when he gets out of jail, because we are going to make a life together. It was like, are you out of your fucking mind? I mean, are you out of your mind? This guy, first of all, had 17, he was sentenced to 17 years. He had probably about, maybe 13, 14 years still to go. And he wasn't going anywhere, Tom. He was going to try to con his way out, like he tried to con us into getting him a letter to write, to the judge to tell him he was a cooperator and hope that he gets a sentence reduction. And she was ecstatic about the relationship that had developed, that had, I guess, kind of was born in this crazy situation of guarding a prisoner, and then developed over the course of time while she was allowing him to have parties and dinners and entertain his friends and family while he was supposed to be, locked down in our custody. And she wanted to continue it. And she loved his mother. His mother fell in love with her. She loved his other relatives. And that was the plan. And obviously when she admitted it, the DA fired her on the spot. And she, what she was afraid of? She was afraid that the story would get out.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, they could have just gotten married and then had conjugal visits, and either she didn't want to do that because that might shed light on the fact that maybe he didn't want to do that and it was all bullshit and she was being used, or more, it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. She didn't really want to know whether or not he was in it. But I think, yeah, more than anything, it was probably like she just didn't want it to get out. Do you think, as you sit here and you've done a number of these things and have listened to people like me and others, do you really think that he was ever going to get married to this woman? Absolutely not. And I think she might have known that.
Well, she might have.
She didn't want to check and see if the fantasy was bullshit. If a dream is good, but it's a dream, who gives a shit? It's real while it lasts.
Or she was totally
just
desperate. Desperate for her, and she we fired her, right? But the feds now took over the investigation because he was a federal prisoner.
Yeah.
And she had, somehow in their minds compromised, this federal prisoner, and they they investigated. Now, they didn't turn up anything. She was never arrested and never charged with anything. And neither was the con man. I mean, what did he do? He was conning people, but he ultimately didn't get what he wanted, which was, this a cut in his sentence, a reduction in the sentence, or maybe even more than that, maybe the opportunity to escape. I never really put to rest the idea that he was looking for the right situation to perhaps stage an escape from that safe house. If she was on, maybe he would have conned her into looking the other way, and then or hitting her over the head and knocking her out, and then saying that he overwhelmed her, and that kind of thing, and then took off. I mean, the guy was not the kind of person who wanted to spend the next 17 years of his life in jail. He was in a position to do anything. So all of those possibilities existed. And I got to tell you, when I wrote this, which is not that long ago, I did some research on her, and I found several websites where she's listed, I guess they're social media websites, and she's listed as single. So I guess the con man was not as romantically involved as she would have liked, and it's just to me was a really sad situation. I mean, desperation was the only thing that I could think of is, and she was just desperate, I think for a life, for a change in her life.
Sure.
And this guy was desperate for something else. He was desperate to get out of jail,
Do you think I should make a move and go after her?
I can off the air, I can give you her name, then you can find her maybe and see if she's around. Do you like Brooklyn girls?
Not at all, not really, but I think it'd be a great story. I was gonna say, well, history is kind of replete. I mean, for lack of a more progressive term, I mean, history is kind of replete with crazy bitches. I mean, Eva Braun marrying Hitler, knowing full well they're about to go shoot themselves.
Yeah.
But then there are also like sad things, like Jackie Kennedy knew about every one of JFK's affairs, and he knew she knew, and she knew that he knew she knew.
Yeah.
Stayed with him, was still madly in love with him. Eisenhower had a mistress during the war. I think it was his secretary or his driver, and she would be whisked out because she was part of his like official, I guess, administration. She actually would.
Right.
She was labeled as a priority to be put into nuclear bunkers in the case of evacuation, but Mimi Eisenhower was not. I mean, FDR had a mistress. He was with her in Warm Springs, Georgia, when he had a stroke and died. But his wife knew, and he knew she knew, and she knew he knew. It's sad. It's these guys that either through power of desperation of getting out of jail, or just wielding the power of, hey, I'm the president.
Yep.
It is sad. It's totally abusive. El Chapo's girlfriend. I don't know if you saw that.
Who's that?
El Chapo.
El Chapo, yeah.
She actually came out earlier this year and said, she was like, interrogated or something, and she was like, I didn't even know he sold drugs, which is just like, I mean, just a ride or die bitch, but like, it's sad. It's abusive, is what it is. It's emotionally abusive.
When you think about when you see this time and time and time again with domestic violence cases where a husband or boyfriend, batters and continues to batter, and the wife calls the police. When the police come, she says, "You know what? I don't want to. I don't want to press charges." Or they get further than that. They get to a courthouse, and she says, "I want to. I'm not going to be a witness against the guy." And then she goes back home, and it happens again. It happens again. I have another story that I'm writing. I was a defense attorney, and I had someone. I was representing this woman who was clearly a battered woman. It was a while ago, before I even knew what the battered woman syndrome was, and she was a classic example of the battered woman syndrome. She would just simply take it, report it, and go back and live with the guy because she was in love with him, and they had been sweethearts for a long time. They got married. He went off to into the army during the Vietnam era. When he came back, he was, as she told me, completely different individual.
Yeah.
He'd become addicted to drugs. He was violent. He was all kind, and it was all in her mind caused by the experiences of war. And she ultimately had to kick him out. Ultimately, she couldn't stand it. They had 2 kids, 2 boys.
Yeah.
The way I got involved is one day she had enough. He had showed up at her apartment building. She lived in a city housing project, and the lock on her front door was broken, and she couldn't convince the city housing authority people to fix the lock, and he would just walk in. And he walked in one day, and she got out of the apartment, got past him, went to the police station, and she had an order of protection in her pocket. And when she got into the police station, she reaches into her back pocket, takes it out. And the desk.
What's an order of protection?
An order of protection is a document that says, issued by the court, that orders the batterer, husband, boyfriend, whoever, a girlfriend, whoever is the one involved in the fisticuffs, to stay away from and don't come close to the
like
restraining
order.
A restraining order. Yeah, here in New York, we call it an order of protection.
Okay.
And if you violate it, you go to jail. You get locked up and you go to jail. So she walked into the precinct and was reaching into her back pocket, taking it out. And as she's taking it out, the desk sergeant says, "Get you and that fucking piece of shit paper out of this police station. Go work it out yourself." She didn't know what to do. She just walked out. She looked, because she knew that the husband had been following her to the precinct. When she got out of the precinct, she didn't see him right away. And she walked quickly back to her housing project. When she got there, he was there, and he started to bang her against the wall, and she got away once again. Finally got to her apartment. But remember what I told you, the lock on the door didn't work. He broke into the apartment, came towards her. The apartment was being painted, and she had paint thinner in the apartment. And she rolled up a newspaper, dipped it into the paint thinner, and turned on the stove and lit the paint thinner, and had a torch and was kind of pushing it at him. "Get out of here, get out of here, get out of here." He kept coming, and she just touched them, not even close, just a little touch on his arm. He had long sleeves, and he went up like a Roman candle, ran down to the neighbor's apartment. She ran after him because that was not her intent. She wasn't intending to kill the guy.
Jesus.
And she found him in the neighbor's bathroom with in a bathtub, trying to put out the flames. And she started to put the flames out with her hands. She was a sculptress, and she burnt her hands beyond use, trying to put out the fire.
That's some Greek tragedy, Shakespearean.
Yep. And he died, of course.
I
got the call. I was representing, at that point, I did what's called here is 18B work. It's assigned counsel work for murders. And she was charged with murder. And I went to the hospital where she was that night, where she was taken, because she was burnt. She was completely burnt. And she told me the story, and it was unbelievable. And I then did the research into how many times this guy had been arrested, how many complaints she had made, how many complaints she withdrew, all of them, until finally she had enough. And it was it's really a tragedy. And I didn't know. I had never done one of these cases before, and I did a lot of research, and I found a psychiatrist who gave me and filled me in on the battered woman syndrome. And she testified on this woman's behalf. The woman didn't do a single day in jail. The judge didn't find her completely innocent. He found her guilty of criminally negligent homicide, and gave her what's called not even a suspended, it was a conditional discharge don't get into trouble again, young lady, or you'll be back.
Yeah.
And that was it. She walked out of court. And she, I don't know to this day, I don't know if she ever regained the use of her hands, because she was, there's a school in Brooklyn, a very, very famous art school called Pratt Institute. And it also has a section for artists and things like that. And not artists, I'm talking about musical artists, as well as physical artists, sculptors and painters and things like that. And she went to that school and became a sculptress. And then she had this horrific tragedy happen, and it ruined her life. And she told me, every time she'd sit with me, she would break down crying. She said, I didn't want to kill him. I loved him.
Yeah.
I just didn't want him. I didn't want him to beat me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, that's a long story to get to the point of what you were saying.
Yeah.
I'm almost finished. I'm writing. I started writing that story. I'm calling it The Sculptress, because I think it works. It works very well. And there's a lot of other nuances to it too, that, I didn't want to bore your audience with.
You could call it napalms. I'm sorry. I've interviewed Vietnam veteran. I'm sorry. I had to. Well, it, what was a wholesome story ended with that. But
yeah, I guess we can't do this without some
we can't. But you know what?
Involved,
Much like a battered woman syndrome, I've come to love the emotional abuse of these episodes. I've come to yearn for them. Mike, I got another guest in 2 minutes, so we got to wrap this one up. As always, all the books and everything, all that good stuff will be in the description, and I will text you when it's up. We'll set up the next one. And obviously it won't be as long as a delay, because I have no intention of getting another concussion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm glad that you're good.
Thanks, man.
I got to tell you one thing. I just turned in the book I started and finished while I'm waiting for the Homicide Is My Business to be printed. The reason it's not printed yet is because I think I mentioned this to you. No paper. Yeah. The printer doesn't have paper. So I thank the idiot in the White House for
Biden 2024. No paper, no baby formula, but World War III, and it will be delivered to your doorstep. Tom. I'm sorry. I apologize to wrap this one abruptly. I lost track of time. Mike, I'll text it to you when it's up. We'll set up the next one. All your stuff in the description. As always, thank you so much, man.
Take care, my friend.